had, with cartel, if that's, the phrase everybody likes to use that word cartel. Well, in this case, it was a cartel, but it was actually the guy that I worked with in Colombia who was I inherited this connection through the older generations because they were working generationally with his family as well, his father. So when I met this guy, who's actually a cousin to the Ochoa brothers, which is the Cali Cartel, that's as close as you're going to get to any description of this gentleman from me. Now, the way it works is, I could buy all day long anywhere in the Caribbean as much fucking weed as you wanted for $10 a pound. $10 a pound. Now I can take $300,000 of some cocaine fucking cowboys money in Miami, which is to any of us at that time was 3 days of bar money at South Beach, Yeah. But I could literally buy 15 tons, 30,000 pounds of Colombian red bud for $300,000. And that 8-day voyage that it takes to get from South America to South Florida, by the time I've made that voyage and get into the United States territorial waters, that $100 a pound shit now becomes anywhere between $500 and $750 a pound. Wow. So if it's just $500 a pound that they're making, I just cleared in 8 days up of 300 grand, 15 million fucking dollars. Now, minus my fee for a job about that size is about 5 million. So I just made this guy 10 million fucking dollars off a $300,000 investment in 8 days. Now, you think he's shooting at me?
now, Tim, what's the most who would pay? We're talking about who would pay you. How would you get paid? Like, would some guy helicopter money and like how much? Like, how did you get your money and how were you paid?
We had a house in Coral Gables that was our money house. And when it came time for me to, Carlito or Leo were only 2 Cubans that I ever worked with in Miami. I didn't want to know anybody else. You got somebody that wants their shit done, they come to you. You come to me. I don't give a fuck who they are.
Wholesale, yeah, you were the wholesale. You did not want to.
I don't fucking want to know them. So, consequently, like I said, the way it works, if Carlito or Leo owe me, $20, $30 million, let's say, because you got to understand, I'm working night, sometimes 3 nights, 4 nights in a row. We take a break and shit like that. Now, this is pay I'm not getting paid for right away.
Yeah.
So I'm getting paid for a job I did 2 weeks prior to that I really don't remember having fucking done, but I'm getting paid all these millions. And we're, at first we started counting the shit. Then it got to be, the money house had at any one time, it had close to $200-300 million of cash in this house. And
in a single stash house?
In a single stash house.
Was it like that scene in Blow where George and his buddy are in the house and they have the boxes of money? Remember?
Yeah, it was a little bit more organized. It was a little more organized than that, though. The master bedroom had hundreds. The next master guest master had 50s, and then the next room had 20s, and then no one room had 10s. But the 8-car garage is where all the 5s were kept, because I mean, if you've ever seen $1 million in 5s,
you were a wholesale. Why would you have lower denominations? I was just out of curiosity.
Well, everybody has to take so much of each denomination.
Oh yeah, because they're probably longer in the system.
Some poor bastard's going to be left with 5s, man.
Okay, so now you're making drug money, right? How did you wash it? How did you get into the system?
Guaranteed.
Well, as a kid, we really didn't learn that sort of thing until we got a little bit older. Actually, till I started taking things over. But as a kid, we were instructed, and we were taught very well by the older generations. And it was important to them, and obviously important, for a lot of reasons that didn't take us long to understand, was that you had to be very careful about spending money and not having anything to show for it, because if you did, and you started getting stupid, and you start buying Vets and Ferraris and building fucking houses, and you're just bling the shit up, then you're just done. You don't work anymore, man. It's over for you, But it was important for them to also understand that, there was a way of life that we could adhere to, because stone crabbing in and of itself was a lucrative business. We did pretty well as stone crabbers. I'm not talking about
$100 a year stone crabbing. but I made 300 million pounds. But I did well on the crabs, though.
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to go for here is that, I could live to a certain degree, with regards to, spending money. I had a brand new Corvette, just as for instance, because, during the season, a good catch, you could average, anywhere from $1,200 to $2,700 a week in those days. So we were living pretty good just on the stone crabbing part of it, but that was negligible money compared to the money we were making.
So what was your first buy?
Yeah, what was your vice?
All right, guys. I never had a beautiful house. I bought this mansion.
Yeah.
We, ironically, when I think about that type of thing, I never had any aspirations to do anything kind of stupid or wild or crazy like that. It was just we were working too much. They worked us, because you didn't just pothole. You had to do the stone crabbing work during the day in order to do the pothole at night, man. So we were double timing it. So there was no fucking off time. And it wasn't like, you go off and you pothole and you see your buddies unloading boats at night. And the next day when you see each other, or you're in town at a bar, you start talking about, man, wasn't that job? No. It was never spoken of. It was never talked about. Nobody ever said anything to anybody. But when you're talking about the kind of money that we're making and the adults getting pissed if they find out you're getting too stupid, we were figuring out ways of, they showed us in, some ways to how to spend money, but we had made a game out of actually trying to figure out how to do it, and do it proper. And one instance I can tell you was that myself and four of my other buddies would take about 200 grand in hundreds each to Miami and South Beach for a long weekend, 3-night weekend in Miami, with the sole intention of all of us coming home with just enough money for gas. So we would go in and, and the club owners loved us on South Beach, man. Every time they saw us coming, because we would take the tab. We'd walk into the club and just take over the tab, say, let us know, if you need more, when the time comes, and we'll send Jimmy over with his couple $100 grand or whatever, and just try to literally spend all the money. And that's one way to spend money, to not have anything to show for it. You take over a club's tab.
Yeah, but I'm with you on the hyper spending, but you're at such an elite level financially at that point, that there was no level of sophistication. You didn't hire lawyers, bankers, get into real estate, maybe get strip clubs, and funnel the money through there, or laundromats. So you guys never reach a level of sophistication to launder the money?
No. That was actually in the early days of, the history of that type of money. When if you watch the movie Scarface, there's a famous scene whereby the banker's standing in his window at his desk on the phone, and he sees these guys carrying duffel bags full of money. Now, that scenario is actually quite real, and it actually would have taken place like that. That's not Hollywood bullshit right there, because at that time, the laundering of money was not a crime.
Correct.
So these guys were taking
it was a non-reported.
Okay, and maybe I'm jumping too far in advance here, but you got fined, you went away, you got fined, and we'll get to all that. 16 million, right? Okay. If you paid that 16 million and had 20 million under your mattress and got out of jail and went to buy a house and a car, even though you paid the fine and you did your time, can they still come after you for that money?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you did the time, you paid the fine, and then they're still going to watch you to see what money you spent?
Well, yeah, because you're still, once again, you're spending undeclared cash, and there's what they call the racketeering influenced corrupt organization.
We know that all too well.
That's the RICO, and I'm sure everybody knows what that is.
Under RICO?
No, unfortunately they didn't. But had I tried to pull something like that, they would have pulled that card on me.
Got it.
So what they wanted it to do, and how they really actually wanted it to work, was quite simply, quite peacefully, and just the United States prosecutor told me one day, she looked me right square in the eye and said, Timmy, she said, we just want this to end, because we're tired of it. One of the craziest things about it was, when it came to, the very serendipitous way about how it all came about for everyone. We were all facing life sentences as kids.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And little did any of us know that September 1st in 1987, the United States government changed the federal sentencing guidelines to what they call now mandatory minimums across the board.
And they became harsher, right?
What's that?
The punishment became harsher after 87, right?
Oh, Jesus, yeah. I mean, well, so that's what I'm going for here, because now, it used to be when you get caught, like a guy got caught, say, in a van of shit, or, maybe a boat got popped or some shit somewhere along the line, somewhere up and down the coast like that, they would get, 12 months, 14 months, 18 months or some shit like that. And, in 6 months or so, they're on their way home, and we're keep the rent paid and the lights on and the family fed, and they just go right back to work again. And that's how we were all working under that same assumption. But then all of a sudden, here comes Operation Peacemaker, which is the operation that wound up taking my crew and everybody that I was working in Southwest Florida with that in 1988. They took us down, and little did we know that the guidelines now, getting caught for doing what we're doing, one indictment had 4 counts. Each count on the indictment was worth a mandatory 10 years to life and a $1 million fine. So if you got one indictment, you had a mandatory 40 years to life and $4 million in fines. That's how significantly the laws changed. And we had no fucking clue, man. So now everybody's, started getting faced with these life sentences, and what the government finally, they did this. What wound up happening was done by design rather than by accident. Let's just say it this way. And they gave what they were, when they started arresting, making and effecting these arrests. I was one of the first 38 to go. The Naples Daily News front page at that time was, huge news. Area part of U.S. pot dragnet. And the subtitle said 38 helped import over 150 tons. I think you may have, here it is right there, right in the middle, 150 tons. And then they've got my name down there somewhere like this. And
is that a surprise, or did you feel the heat coming?
No, it just came out of the blue, man. None of us had a clue.
I mean, but even making that kind of money, okay, you're not spending it. And did the old timers say, hey, listen, get a lawyer on retention. Start paying a guy to, like, God forbid this day comes down. I mean, you guys just winged everything, huh? Like, screw it. I mean, no lawyer, no guy on retention, no inside cop. You're making that kind of money. You're not trying to bribe. Back in those days, you could bribe anybody. Cops are making $5 grand a year. You can't bribe a cop.
Well, yeah, you know what? Bribery was a very very efficient method by way of doing things in those days, because you quite simply offer a guy 10 times his annual salary to maybe go over down the street and take a nap for a couple hours. What the fuck do you think he's going to do, dude? He's going to go take a nap for a couple hours. That part was easy. Although the way we were operating and the things we were doing and the focus that we were putting was on keeping our asses from getting busted at the time we were doing what it was we were doing, by keeping our equipment upgraded, having the fastest, keeping on top of the counter surveillance technology that we were using was as good as, if not better than, what they were using against us. Because one of the crew guys I had working on my Everglades City crew was one of the Everglades Park National Rangers. He was a ranger. He introduced me to the Cuban fella in Miami that was selling the government their counter surveillance technology. Only I was buying better shit than they were buying, because I could afford better shit. So that's, and plus the boats we were using. When I finally started doing my thing, and you're talking about unloading, multiple nights and, 20 tons, 30 tons, 40 tons, and that 150 tons that they alluded to there, when I got arrested that day, 150 tons plus, they didn't find out till about a week or so later that was only about a week's work. They decided that, that's when they figured out, oh, whoa, we really opened up a can of worms here, man.
Yeah. Tim, we'll get into we'll arc it out, or we'll kind of get into the arrest and what happened after. But before we get there, who was the buyer? Was it, Cuban organized crime? Were the Colombians? Who were the distribution? So they get it from your crew. what organization was buying from you guys?
Well, there were I don't know any particular organization by any specific name out of Miami, but it was basically I kept a distance, I kept a barrier between myself and that element through Carlito and Leo, my two Cuban partners in Miami, by not knowing. I don't want to know who the fuck's, pot I'm hauling. I don't care. And the beautiful thing about it was, when this takes me right back, and it has everything in the world to do with, the violence aspect of things. When people say, oh, violence and what if you lost their shit? Well, dude, if I can make you $10 million off of $300,000, take that math and go a little bit further. Take that $300,000 and divide it into 9,700,000, and then you get the number 32.
Yeah.
What that number 32 represents is the number of chances I've got to get your next load in before you've lost money. I can lose the next 31 loads in a row, but I get the 32nd one in. You've still made money. You haven't lost money yet. That's the ridiculous.
Was that conversation ever had? Did that ever happen?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just
lost loads.
Common sense. The math was already done for them. Yeah. Well, I just spent $300,000. I just made 10 million. Well, fuck. So now, you're not going to kill the guy that just made you 10 million off of 300,000.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know about the pot business, but what it explained to me in kind of the